Introduce Valerie Davidson. Most of you know who she is already because your world is so expansive and everyone loves and adores you. This is the first time we've had Commissioner from Health and Social Services at this conference, so really appreciate that you come and speak with us.
Hoyana, Lisa, and also to Victor, and also to TCC for the leadership that you've really provided in really the whole arena of tribal court jurisdiction and tribal jurisdiction in Alaska. Huinga nukagalo kamitlamakanan tlu yupiugo mamtakaitlakamiu anaka kuiginlokamiungok yupiugok ataka kasawok Port Orchard, Washington agmingok huinga jali Health and Social Services. My Yupik names are Nukharalo Kanamitlamagnan. My English name is Valerie Davidson. I'm Yupik. I'm from Bethel. My mom's family is from Guiginlok on the coast. My father's family is Gasak or Caucasian or white, and they are from Port Orchard, Washington. And my grandmother's family is actually from my grandmother is from Renak. It's a village that doesn't exist anymore. It's near Duntuduleak. And my appa or my grandfather's family is from Nelson Island. So I was thinking about what really to say today that kind of brings it all together about what it is that we're all asking for and what is it that we deserve. And the truth is, Alaska Native families and American Indian families really want what every other family in Alaska and America wants and deserves. We want our children and our family members to be healthy. We want them to be happy. We want them to be well educated, and we want them to live in safe communities. But because of where we live and because of our unique relationship with the federal government, we may have to do things differently to accomplish that. But you know what? It's worth doing, because we are no less deserving than any other population in this country to be able to have that for our families. It is a basic need. And the truth is, we won't thrive unless we believe that we can expect that for our families. So this summer I've been so lucky. It's why somebody saw me earlier today and they said, wow, you look so different. You look so happy now than when I saw you in April. And I said, thank you. And the reason is because I'm working out of Bethel this summer. And I've been working out of Bethel this summer. My boss, I asked my boss if I would be able to work out of Bethel this summer because it's really important to me that my kids learn to fish. They learn how to, and I don't mean like this kind. I mean like this kind. Where you can take your ukuk self, just lean back and that whole net just pops right out of the water. And my kids, I want them to learn how to cut fish, and they've been cutting fish since they were 5. And my older bunnik has been driving the boat since she was 6. Not by herself, for all you folks who are worried about what a terrible mother I might be. I definitely am not Mother of the Year, but I do try. I do my best. But that cultural context is so important, not only for ourselves, but also really building and reinforcing that resiliency in our children from a very young age. Because you know what? Life can be hard and bad things can happen. But if our children know who they are and they know where they come from and they know they are accountable to the people and the communities that we live in, they can recover from the mistakes that they've made. I've made lots of mistakes. I make mistakes every day. And it isn't the mistakes that define you, it's how you deal with them, how you move on. And it's also how you treat people. Because you know, if you're not a very nice person, everybody trips and falls once in a while. We all do it. And if you trip and fall, your good friends will laugh, but then they'll reach a hand and they'll help you up. But if you don't treat people well, they're just going to keep on walking. So we're actually having a cabinet meeting. Governor Walker is having a cabinet meeting in Bethel later this fall. And we're actually going to be having cabinet meetings throughout the state. Not just in Anchorage, not just in Fairbanks, and not just in Juneau, but in some of the hub communities, and hopefully traveling to some of the smaller villages. Because we recognize that in order to really be able to represent all of the state, we have to have some context. We have to know a little bit more about the communities that we are serving. So let me give you a little bit of information about sort of what we've done, or some of the direction that we are heading as a department. You'll probably hear later on that some of the greatest opportunities and the greatest progress that we've made in the department is actually from the Division of Juvenile Justice. And I know that Rob Wood is here today. He's the Director of Juvenile Justice. I thought I saw him earlier. There he is. And so juvenile justice really has learned time and time again that it's something that we know in all of the areas that we work, whether it's in tribal health, whether it's in justice, whether it's in social services, we have better outcomes when you can address issues at the local, at the community level, and when you work with the people in the community of the population that you serve. And I'm not going to say much more about juvenile justice because I know that Rob is going to do that, or has already done a lot of that before. But we really appreciate the tribes who have stepped up and have been willing to go on this journey and learn with us as a department, the opportunity to be able to work with us. And you have been very, very gracious as we have made a few mistakes along the way, and I'm sure we'll make more. But you have been very gracious in moving forward with us, and our kids are having better outcomes. Attorney General Richards mentioned the ICWA regulations earlier. So we did have the emergency regulations. Here's a couple of things you should know. I signed the order for permanent, to make those regulations permanent a little while ago, so those should be become permanent here pretty soon. I'm not sure when they're going to be posted, but I do want to thank the Attorney General and his staff for working with the Department of Health and Social Services to make those ICWA regulations happen. One of the other things that the governor did is he introduced, or actually transmitted and had the Rules Committee introduce on his behalf legislation regarding child custody, making it easier for families and tribal members and tribes to be able to intervene, and also to be able to do it more efficiently. The House version of that is House Bill 200. It was referred to the Health and Social Services Committee and also referred to the Judiciary Committee. But besides what's in regulation and besides what's in law, there are also processes that we have control over, and that, quite frankly, we can improve. And so as we've been having conversations at the department, some of the things that we've been asking are, okay, are we, as families come forward and maybe they have an issue that normally we would say, okay, maybe this person has one too many kids for what we think is our norm for foster care placement. And I kind of smiled as I heard that one, because we're good at kids. At least the Yupiks, we are really good at kids. And the fact is that that there are variances that families can get and can apply for that will allow you to be able to do things a little bit differently. And so are we letting families know what those variance opportunities are, what the process is to apply? Those are reviewed by a regional variance committee. One of the things that we are doing, and I want to thank Christy, if Christy is here, Christy Lawton there she is, from OCS, asked me when I first started about the possibility of having tribal representation on the regional variance committees. And because right now, until this date, it has really been only OCS employees. And we think that in order for those variance committees to really be reflective of the people that we serve, we should have tribal representation on that. So one of the things we also know is what I have thought is refreshing honesty on my part is not necessarily so perceived by the receiver of that information. And I have been told repeatedly that, gee, you're just blunt. You just say anything. To which I said, Guyana. So what we know is, sometimes we just have to call things for what they are. And what we know is putting kids on planes to adjudicate child welfare matters isn't working for us as a state. The situation is getting worse. It's not getting better. And we know that there may be times when a tribe, quite frankly, wants us to be able to take over that matter. I mean, because there are some cases that are really, really tough, but that's their decision to make. And when that happens, we're ready to do that. But we need to try another way. And I want to tell you, one of the things that has been so beneficial for me to be working out of Bethel this summer is I've been able to travel to some of the villages in the region and visit with the tribes about what's working and what isn't. And we met with, when we were in Alaganak, one of the things we heard was that when they had an active tribal court there were no out-of-community placements of children during that time, not a single one. But once that funding went away and the tribal courts were no longer able to operate due to a simple lack of funding, they saw their kids being moved out of the community again. And it wasn't that kids weren't being taken out of the home, they were when it warranted, but every kid stayed in that community. There were no out-of-community placements. There were still out-of-home placements, but there weren't any out-of-community placements. When we were in Guitluk yesterday morning, actually, we also heard, we were traveling with the Pew Charitable Trust is doing a, really taking a look at criminal justice, the criminal justice system in Alaska, and when they were first going to come, they were originally going to do all of their meetings in Anchorage. And we said, well, then don't come. I mean, do it from Seattle or do it from somewhere in what my mother still calls the United States of America. Because if you're just going to come to Anchorage, then you're missing a huge opportunity. And how can you make a recommendation for Alaska without traveling to the real Alaska? And so to their credit, I said, and I'm even willing to host you in Bethel, and we'll go to a couple of villages, we'll go by boat, and we'll also get on a plane and we'll go to a village farther away. And to their credit, they came. But they're not just going to Bethel, they're also going to go to Nome, and I think they're going to try and get around the state a little bit more. And when we were in Guitluk, we heard from a tribal member who said, I'm going to be honest with you, I am very familiar with the criminal justice system. He said, I've been through the criminal justice system. And I don't mean on the other side, I mean in the criminal justice system. And he said, when this last one, he got arrested, I think for DUI. And he said, it's not working. He said, we send people to correctional facilities. And he said, we're just getting railroaded everywhere. It's not working. I don't know who these people are. They don't know me. I met my lawyer, and my lawyer is a public defender, and he won't even listen to me. And I can't stand up and say anything on my own behalf in court because the judge tells me to sit down and talk through my lawyer. I don't even know the judge. None of these people know me. And he said, if we had tribal court, I live with these people. I see them every day. And I'm accountable to them. When they tell me to do something, I'm a lot more likely to listen because I know I'm going to see them every day. Those people in Bethel, I never see them. And they never see me. They don't really see who I really am as a person. And that system isn't working. And we also met with people who are in positions where they are in positions to help us. And we were in a meeting, and I'll just say it, we were in a meeting with a group of folks who didn't have a kind word to say about Yupik people. Not a kind word. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm sitting here in this meeting wearing this beautiful qasbaq. It's pretty obvious I'm from here. And at the same time, I was so glad that they said it out loud and they weren't just thinking it and not saying it. And I finally had to say, in your opinion, do the people in this region have any redeeming qualities? Is there a reason that you stay? And it wasn't until I said that in that way that the conversation changed. And it was, I said, what can we do differently? You've described things that aren't working. You're not telling us anything we don't know. But what is working? What are you proud of? What could potentially work here? And it wasn't until we asked that question that conversation changed. But again, that cultural context is so important. And if you don't know because you're not from there, and the only place you go is to your job and back to your home, and you don't actually interact with the people in the community, then you're not ever going to get there. And one of the things that we've been asking is, do our department staff reflect the population of the people that we serve? So if we know that in a program that 50% of the people that we serve are Alaska Native or American Indian, or 66% of the people that we serve are Alaska Native or American Indian, does our staff reflect that diversity? Or does everybody have the same haircut? I was in a meeting recently and I sat in the back of the room and I thought, wow, everybody has the same haircut. They are the same demographic. And we're better than that. We deserve better than that. What's good for Alaska Native children is good for all of Alaska's children. What's good for Alaska Native families, it's good for all of Alaska's families. And we need more diversity in our workforce. And if our departments don't reflect that diversity, and I've asked that question and I've heard from people sometimes, well, it's really, really hard to get people to come work for us. It's really, really hard to find people. And my pushback has been, they just don't want to work for us. And what is it that we are doing wrong that people don't feel welcome to apply, or that they don't feel welcome to stay? And we have to ask ourselves those tough questions. And they're really awkward. I mean, even now it got real quiet in here. So we're trying, we're making improvements. Sometimes it feels glacial. And I don't mean like the global warming, fast glacial melting. I mean like the old days when those glaciers melted real slow. But at least we're shining a bright light and showing that we recognize that there is a problem and we're committed to fixing it. The last thing I wanted to talk about is we should start changing the way that we talk about things that are, we sometimes say things very, very politely. Like in federal law, when we talk about the Alaska exceptions, which are basically the Alaska excuses or the Alaska punishments. They aren't the Alaska exceptions, they are the Alaska punishments. And it means that tribes in Alaska don't get the benefit that all of the other tribes in the lower 48 states have, even though we make up half of them. There's no reason for that. So let's not talk about Alaska exceptions anymore. Let's call them for what they really are, Alaska punishments. And then finally, one last thing is there are things that we can do as we're drafting legislation, both at the federal level and also at the state level. At the federal level, if there is an opportunity for a program to provide authority or funding to states, do a really simple edit. It'll only take 4 words and 1 punctuation mark. So anytime you see states, add a comma and add the words tribes and tribal organizations. Really simple fix. And the state can do our part. If we see an area where we say cities or boroughs or fill in the blank have this authority or have this funding stream, make the same edit. Add a comma, tribes and tribal organizations. Because until we recognize the incredible gift that we have here in Alaska, and unless we include everyone, we are going to continue to have challenges. And I want to go back to what I said at the very beginning. Alaska Native families want what every other family wants. We want our children and our family members to be healthy. We want them to be happy. We want them to be well educated, and we want them to live in safe communities. And you know what? We deserve it. So with that, Goyan.